Fulham, Koviak, Cumby, Napolito, Davis, DiLorenzo, Dorsey, Dorsnowski, Greer, Fry, Bobbin, Gay, George, Gopel, Hopkins, Hunter, Iftikhar, Jacobson, Cassetti, Keenan, Kern, Kirby, Lemery, Lewis, Lusry, Matthews, Manwaring, Middleton, Monica, Montepulcio, Pigford, Primus, Ryan, Vans, Sanders, Santiago Cedillo, Sheridan, Bergen, Silfert, Tapia, Talaka, Violette, Von Cannon, Walker, Watley.
With the quorum being present, is there a motion to approve the Journal of November 11th, 2025 as found online? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now in line for general orders of the Senate, beginning with reports from Senate leadership. Speaker Pro Tempore Violette, you are recognized to give a report on the Rules Committee.
Hey y'all, rules met 5:30 Sunday. We went over 4 pieces, all of which were found favorable. Before I yield the questions, I want to really just take a minute to thank all of Morris staff. I think they're doing a great job. I think
We could clap, guys.
recognition. They've been really awesome. And with that, I yield my time to questions.
The Speaker Pro Tempore yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. We will now hear a report from the Academics Committee. Chairperson Koviak, you are recognized.
Good evening. We met at a normal time on Tuesday. We looked at a lot more legislation than normal, 7 pieces, which I think is the most that's happened so far this semester. Currently, as of right now, 131 was found favorable with an amendment, essentially just clarifying that we are moving the Welsh Humanities classrooms, not the office building, just in case any confusion does occur. The other pieces that were not found normal favorable was 139. There was just some issues with clarity and some specificity when it comes to action items for the purposes of admin. And then 140 was also found unfavorable. But with that, I yield my time to questions.
The chairperson yields their time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Finance Committee. Chairman Matthews, you are recognized.
Good evening. Finance Committee met at our usual time and place last Friday. We reviewed $11,647 and approved $9,644. In addition, we reviewed two pieces of legislation. The judiciary one, whatever that one was found favorable. And then the bill to give the treasurer a vote was found unanimously favorable. I understand that bill was met with some contention in a few committees. I can understand why, and I think that comes from, one, a misunderstanding of what the result of that bill passing would do in Finance Committee, as well as to the division of powers. I think there's some confusion there, and that is on me. I don't think I explained it well enough last week, really what all of that meant, and so I am prepared and excited to address those concerns on the contested calendar. With that, I yield the questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Health and Safety Committee. Chairwoman Cumby, you are recognized.
Hi, everyone. We met last Wednesday per usual after Senate. And we found SBL 11740 unfavorable with 6 nays and then 1 abstain. And so that was as far as legislation. As far as legislation that we're cooking up, we're still researching how to implement the sunscreen dispensers, also talking about healthier vending machine options, and hopefully a mental health week in Darla Moore. And so they're working super hard and killing it. But yeah, yield to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Judiciary Committee. Chairwoman Diapolito, you are recognized.
Hey guys, Judiciary met on Friday at 12:30 in the LSC, an online little hybrid. We went over SBL 117-138, which was found unanimously favorable with 1 abstention. SBL 117-140 was found favorable by a vote of 5-1 with 1 abstention. And then after that, we discussed our own legislation as a committee, and then furthered this discussion in our group meet so that we could make sure it was ready for today. But we discussed legislation based for fair elections codes. That will be hitting the first reading calendar today, and I'll explain more then. But I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Liberties and Representation Committee. Chairwoman Hopkins, you are recognized.
Hi guys. We met at our normal time on Monday at 4 p.m. We met virtually because there was less to do this week than normal while we're just finalizing plans for the week after Thanksgiving break. We reviewed 2 pieces of legislation, 138, which was found unanimously favorable, and 140, which was found unanimously unfavorable. So that's great. And then also we are finalizing dates for a tabling event. So if you're in the committee and haven't yet voted, check that out. You can select multiple dates, and so far only me and 1 other person has voted. So get on that. With that, I yield the questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Chairwoman Anderson is not here. Vice Chairman Dorsey, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. Powers met on Friday to interview Logan Seidler, and he was found unanimously favorable. And then we also met this past Monday at 5:15, where we reviewed 2 pieces of legislation. We found SBL 117-138 unanimously favorable, then SBL 117-140 favorable by a vote of 3-1 with 1 abstention. And then with that, I yield my time to questions.
The Vice Chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Student Life Committee. Chairman Spurgeon, you are recognized.
Hi, we met this week, hour after normal time, so everyone could go to the candidates meeting if they wanted to. We found everything favorable except for 140 due to concerns over imbalance of powers, and the treasurer having a say in multiple steps of the process. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that later. I yield questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the Sustainability Committee. Chairwoman Gopel, you are recognized.
Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Also happy early Thanksgiving. I'm so excited. I literally have 3 Thanksgiving planned because my favorite holiday. We met on Monday at our usual time, 6:30. We reviewed SBL 117-138 and found it favorable. We also reviewed SBL 117-140 and found that favorable, but we did have a long talk about it. We decided to send it through committee, but we did want to debate it and had some questions about it today. And then we also talked about how to get people to actually recycle. I know we've passed a few pieces of legislation about like adding recycling bins and adding signage, but like how do you actually get people to follow it? So we talked about like having like specific areas for recycling, maybe like more education, tabling. But if you have ideas, please let me know because I am open to anything and I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We will now hear a report from the freshman council. Are there any representatives present? Y'all can come on down. And if you're shadowing, Emma, raise your hand. Yeah, raise it, bye. Whoever's shadowing, you can come sit next to her, or Boca. Yeah, perfect.
All right, hi. We're running the AMSA Finals event in the Scholars Corner of Thomas Cooper Library from December 1st through the 3rd. In collaboration with the Health and Safety Committee, each day highlights a different resource. On December 1st, we'll hand out our study planners in Celsius. On December 2nd, Health and Safety will host their Brain Food Bar, where students can make their own nutritious snacks/trail mix. And on December 3rd, we'll promote Student Success Center resources with an additional Celsius and a link tree of helpful tools. Throughout all 3 days, we'll also have a post-it wall of wisdom where students can use tips and affirmations.
All right, and so looking forward to next semester, the Liberty Representation Committee is currently focused on transportation, and specifically how to educate the student body on how to use that transportation system that we have here at USC. They're also currently working out some kinks in their ideas, but they are reaching out to leaders on campus that represent several areas, including transportation, the Transfer Students Association, and the University 101 director. Their current goal is to have a more solid plan on the way forward in the coming weeks so they can do an event next semester. For the Student Life Committee, they're continuing to work on their thrift pop-up event that will be happening in mid-February to early March, and they're looking for ways to collaborate with other committees to host other events and initiatives that are in line with their student life area of focus.
And for next semester, Health and Safety will be hosting their Stop the Spike event with an informal presentation about what to do in a situation where your drink has been spiked. This will be followed by a mocktail making activity and will take place on January 21st at 6 p.m. There will be a sign up going out later on. The location is currently unconfirmed, so stay tuned for more information on that. Also, if any senators or others have access to any extra drink covers or drink safety items that you would like to donate to the committee, we would very much appreciate it.
And then finally, for sustainability, unfortunately, due to some logistical challenges that are related to getting items shipped on time, the Christmas ornament event will have to be canceled this time. But a new event with a similar concept is currently in the planning stages, that we're looking to hold that sometime in the next semester, likely close to Valentine's Day. And also, the Sustainability Committee for a pop-up store will also be held on February 17th. And at this time, we yield our time to questions.
Really quickly, tell us y'all's like names and where you're from.
I'm Preston Kunkel. I'm from Chapin, South Carolina, and I'm a political science major.
I'm Nina Rostam. I'm from South Reading, Virginia, and I'm part of the Health and Safety Committee.
Awesome. The representatives yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you all. Good job.
Thank you.
We're now in line for a report from the Constitutional Council. Chief Justice Butcher, you're recognized.
The court approved a new administrative order that is in the drive. If you'd like to read it, I have nothing else to report. I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. I have my time to questions.
The Chief Justice yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. We will now hear a report from the Speaker of the Senate, Maura Hamilton. I'm recognizing myself. You don't have to scan that QR code. Hi guys, I hope you had a good week. Just some quick administrative stuff. Nothing too long. First thing after Senate today, we're going to take a really quick picture. It's going to take 5 minutes. It's going to be in here. We don't have to go anywhere. I promise it will take 5 minutes. And we won't have to wait for anybody because everybody's going to already be here. So please don't pack up your stuff. As we're nearing the end, the reason for that is we obviously are not going to have Senate next week because of Thanksgiving. So our next Senate session is going to be December 3rd. And that's going to actually be our last Senate session of the semester. So just as a mix of last session, celebrating all of our people who are graduating or going abroad, all of that good stuff, I'm going to do a holiday themed dress down. Think ugly Christmas sweaters, whatever holiday you want to dress up for, that type of stuff, or just winter themed items. So that should be super duper fun. Alongside with that, we have SG Wide on Tuesday, December 2nd Everybody should have that in their calendar because we have SU-wide every single first Tuesday of the month. That's going to be from 5:30 probably to like 7-ish in here. I do just want to go over excused absences for that really quickly. I know that I told y'all that we were going to be more lenient when it came to absences, but when I say that, it's like things that are regularly scheduled. So like if you're working on that Tuesday, that's okay. If you have class on that Tuesday, that's totally okay. If it's just like a random one-off club meeting or like an event for like your residence hall, that would not be an excused absence just because this is something that's like expected of you as a senator. But if it's like class work, that would be okay. If you have any questions about it, just let me know. Make sure that you send in those absences at least 24 hours in advance. But as I said last time, if y'all are sitting here right now and you know that you're not going to be able to be there, just do Addison a favor so she doesn't have to be doing work over Thanksgiving break and just submit it now. And then you can also find out if your excuse is approved or denied. I also just want to one more time go over the fact that unfortunately some of our chair people are going abroad in the spring, so there's going to be some open chairperson vacancies. I'm going to open up that application. I gave you guys a different time than last week, but after some more thinking on it, I'm going to open up the application after Senate ends on Wednesday because those chairpersons will have officially like resigned then. It's going to be open for probably about a week or two into winter break, so well past finals, and then we're just going to be doing virtual interviews because I'm going to be in New Jersey and I'm not going to come back for chairperson interviews. And then we should have all of those decisions at least by the first rules meeting. So you'll be able to go and shadow. You won't officially be a chairperson yet. You won't be a voting member. You'll be able to like be there in spirit. You're not guaranteed a chair position if you're a vice chair of a committee. I definitely encourage all of our vice chairs to apply, but you're not just automatically guaranteed. So please don't think that. Please still submit an application. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. But otherwise, keep up the great work. Have a great Thanksgiving next week. I hope you guys have a lot of fun with your families. Please send me pictures. And with that, I yield my time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. We are now in line for a report from the student body treasurer. Are there any representatives present? Seeing none. We are now in line for a report from the student body vice president. Vice President Jordan Richardson, you are recognized.
Hey y'all, not much for me today. We've had a lot going on the vice president things for all year now, so I told my team to kind of take a break this week. My team is working on the next SU on the street, which is going to be in December. We're going to be doing a exam stress relief table kind of thing. We also did Secretary of Athletics, Sam, did a great job with the rivalry week stuff today. Good job for him. But that's all. So have a great Thanksgiving. I'll see y'all.
Second for SG-wide.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. I yield my time to questions.
The student body vice president yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. We are now in line for a report from the student body president. President Courtney Tax, you are recognized.
Hey everyone, hope we're all having a great last week before next week. I know I am. Last weekend, sorry for my absence, I was in USC Beaufort for the day. It's a 2.5-hour drive, and so I drove more than I was there. But it's okay, it was worth it. It's an absolutely gorgeous campus, 2,000 students. One of the big things, we don't have very similar issues. They have free parking, and all of their students have a parking pass right next to their residential hall that they live in all 4 years. But very different issues, but their main concern was student engagement. So we talked about kind of the implementation of a bigger team, including freshmen and maybe a GR team as well, because their county and city ordinances are very different than ours. A lot of their buildings are historic buildings that cannot be renovated or rebuilt because there are protections surrounding them. But their USC Beaufort campus, actually in Beaufort, is in desperate need of some facility renovations, but their Beaufort campus in Bluffton is gorgeous. That's where we were most of our time. I am working on my board presentation about Russell House and the campus activity fee right now. I'm giving that December 16th. So I am really, really grateful for the legislation that you guys wrote about Russell House and about accessibility concerns that you guys are having. And then if you have anything else, please let me know. I would absolutely love to add it. make sure that I'm advocating for the needs of all of us in the organization and not just the ones that I'm seeing. I had a meeting with advising on Monday. They were very excited to see the legislation that was written regarding advising and the want to implement a platform to better advising and the registration process. They informed me that they're working on, or they're currently looking at a platform that would do more than Corsical, and it would kind of be more individualized to students, and it would be implemented into the Banner system as well. Corsical currently is only attached to the university outside of Banner. This one would be more individual to the person. So if you were a dual degree, double major, had a minor, wanted to graduate early, anything like that, it would be more individualized to that. But I'll keep you updated on what I hear right now. They're in the process of getting that approved. So don't want to announce too much yet, but I just want to let you know they hear y'all. They want you to, wanted to let y'all know that if they're working on it. Additionally, if you have anything about this, I am meeting with Bryce Bible on Friday to do an IT semester review. So trust me, I think he knows that Garnet Gate's down. I think he knew about the Blackboard outage. But if you have anything else regarding IT that you think would be good for him to know, please let me know. Happy to bring that up. And some really fun news as of today. We are purchasing 8 10-packs of Columbia to Charlotte round trips for students. So the shuttle that takes them to the airport. So we are going to kind of pilot this, see what the demand is, and when we're looking at our budget for next year. Kind of going off of what Maura was saying, we have SG-wide December 2nd. We're going to be making holiday cards for children in the hospital, but I'm also going to bring hot chocolate and snacks, and it'll be a fun little time. And then we're also going to do like a little white elephant gift exchange. We're going to be sending out a form to see who would be interested in that, but it's a $10 limit. If you're interested, sign up. If you're not, don't sign up. It's okay. For the Coastal game this weekend, we're doing a $10 off Uber discount. We're only doing one drop because I know everybody's going home, so we'll save all of the really, really big Uber discounts for the Clemson game next weekend. And then just a reminder, speaking of Clemson, we have 2 surveys out right now. We have one survey that will give you, that you will be entered to potentially win 2 Clemson Carolina tickets. And we have our GR survey as well, where you'll be entered to potentially win a parking pass. So fill those out. Yeah. With that, I yield my time to questions.
The student body president yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. We are now in line for special orders of the Senate. Are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read?
A communication from the Office of the Speaker of the Student Senate regarding vacancy applicant Andrew Boswell.
The applicant is referred to the Powers and Responsibilities Committee. Continuing on with the special orders of the Senate, are there any letters, petitions, appointments, applications, or other the clerk will now read? Seeing no more special orders of the Senate, we are now in the motion period. Are there any motions on the floor at this time? Chairwoman Diapolito. There's been a motion to add a bill to the first reading calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is added and granted the legislative number of SBL 117-145. Chairman Matthews. Does the sponsor find this friendly or unfriendly? Seeing as the sponsor has found this amendment friendly, the amendment is now adopted. Senator Coulomb. There's been a motion to remove Senator Coulomb from the Academics Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Coulomb. There's been a motion to add Senator Coulomb to the Finance Committee. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any other motions on the floor? Senator Oloco. There's been a motion to add a recommendation to the first reading calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is added and granted the legislative number of 146. Chairman Matthews. There's been a motion to add a bill to the first reading calendar. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is added to the first reading calendar and granted the legislative number of 147. Senator Coulomb. let me find the title, 1 second, sorry. If it gets untabled, it immediately goes to the second contestant. Got it. Okay. There's been a motion to untable SBL 11731, a resolution to establish an ad hoc committee to research and propose alternatives for the student government calendar term. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is untabled and added to the contested reading calendar. Senator Von Cannon. Granted. Senator Keenan. Given that that's already on the contested calendar, you typically can't commit because it will go to a period of debate and a vote. Any other motions on the floor at this time? I believe there was an amendment submitted to my office for SBL 131. Was that motioned on? If it's not your amendment, you can't motion. You can motion at a different time. That's okay. Are there any motions on the floor at this time? Okay. Seeing no further motions, is there a motion to end this motion period? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We are now on the call of the introduction of new legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 117-141, sponsored by the Finance Committee, a recommendation to permit the Finance Committee to allocate funds.
Chairman Matthews, you are recognized.
Hello again. Yeah, we approved $9,644.49 for the orgs listed in the bill. And also, if you're on Finance Committee members, hello. We're meeting tomorrow at 6 over Teams because a lot of us are leaving town on Friday morning. So, yeah. I yield the question.
The chairman yields his time to question. Are there any questions? Chairwoman Hopkins. There's been a motion to pass SBL 117-141 by unanimous consent. Is there a second? Wait, no. You don't speak on a unanimous consent motion. I'm sorry, I've been up since 5 a.m. Seeing no objections, this legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-142, sponsored by Senators Kopiak, Fry, Sanders, a recommendation to develop a university standard minimum wage of $15 an hour for all student workers.
The sponsors are recognized. Does the sponsor find this friendly or unfriendly? Okay. Seeing as the sponsor has found this amendment friendly, it is now adopted. The sponsors are still recognized for the piece we just read across the desk.
Chairperson Koviak, I don't know where they went, but I'm going to do my best to talk about this a little bit. So as you'll see in the piece itself, USC's institutional minimum wage as of July 2023 is codified to be $15 per hour. However, the majority of student workers do not have the same institutional minimum wage for departments and other employment opportunities on campus. And we essentially want it to be codified for undergrads as well, that the minimum wage should be $15. And I don't know if you have anything that you want to say on it as well.
Just to re-emphasize that it is codified right now that the $15 minimum wage is only for graduate students, and we essentially want to extend that to undergrad for basically contracts pertaining specifically to U of SC. So this wouldn't technically include, like, say, like Blends Bowls, where I work in Russell House. That's like a third party kind of contract. Like, my paycheck doesn't come from South Carolina, it comes from Blends. So it's excluding those sort of third party organizations. But the $15 undergrad minimum wage would pertain specifically to, like, university organizations.
Sorry for my absence, y'all. I ran earlier from Coliseum to here in about 5 minutes and then lost my phone. So I've just been a time already. But essentially this piece is going based off of what the university has already implemented for other students other than undergraduates. The basic undergraduates, it kind of sounds bad to say it that way, but it's the best way I can think of to describe it. Because currently there is a codified minimum wage through HR for graduate students and for students who are temporary workers. That sounds like, well, what the heck's that? Essentially, if you think about students who have issues where financial aid decides to go kapooey, things like if they are a student transitioning from being in the Gateway program, enrolling into school, pathway, anything like that, where there's a little bit of weirdness where you're at 100% a true student, but you're becoming a true student, or even situations where I had this brought up as an option of like if you bring in an outside person for a job like a research, they may not be affiliated with the university, but they have a standardized like minimum 15. So technically speaking, it can apply to certain specific types of undergraduate students if departments want to do so, but it is not standard. That is currently existing for those students, but it is not existing for students at the undergraduate level, doctorate, whatever, across the board. And grand scheme, you know, we're in an affordability crisis across campus and across our country. And there's research that shows, you know, colleges just increasing price by an exorbitant amount. You know, cost of living, all those kinds of things. And there is a bit of research done by MIT about, you know, affordability. And they said, based off of that, if you were in Columbia, our specific city, to be able to live comfortably where you're having a certain amount of your money set aside for necessities, certain amount set aside for like the kind of fun things, just existing in life money, and then the my car blew up kind of money, you would have to be making at 40 hours a week, $20 an hour. Now, students don't work that many hours to begin with, but that's for just general day-to-day life. So if you're looking at that, going based off of what you think to be a student, the $15 minimum is vastly overdue. And a lot of us, I know we can reference in different departments, are not making anywhere close to that. Some are making as little as the minimum wage, which is chump change, grand scheme of how expensive everything is nowadays, or is kind of getting there, but isn't really close. So this is just essentially trying to address that problem for students. But we yield our time to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Lewis.
So the only law when it comes to minimum wage is the federal minimum wage. South Carolina does not have its own codified state minimum, separate from federal. So if you're going based off of that, the minimum wage, it's either like $7.50 or $8. Yeah, it's $7.50. So, yeah, the only thing that would affect it is if we're going based off of what federal minimum wage is, which is that $7, which hasn't been changed since 2009. So.
Any other questions? Senator Hunter.
I mean, grand scheme, a lot of these things are already being discussed in departments. And a lot of them have already started coming up with plans to do that. You know, I know I reference housing a lot, but that's where I work. But I know we are already talking about and have been talking about increasing wages across the board in a lot of ways. A lot of departments undergo audits and things like that where they're looking at where their money's going and how it's used. A lot of things like that are used to also evaluate student wages. It is likely that there is probably some functional money somewhere that could be used to help get to this point. When it comes to the actual like implementation, I'm not exactly sure how each department would handle this, but grand scheme, if we can't afford to pay our students, they're just not going to work here. And that's how that goes. I mean, I know a lot of y'all probably have off-campus jobs because you know on-campus is not going to pay you enough for the level of work that you're doing or for the hours that you need and to make enough to pay your bills.
That's also like out of the scope of student senate, if that makes sense. Yeah. Any other questions? Senator Von Cannon. That would also be somewhat out of our scope.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak on that much.
Kind of the same thing we talked about with the questions 2 weeks ago, like what is our decision versus not. Senator Iftikhar, do you have a question? Or?
I mean, I can't speak to the specifics when it comes to how that's handled within each thing, but grand scheme, Aramark is partnering with a lot of locations like Chick-fil-A, you know, Panda Express, all those kinds of places. If you look at what their actual pay is for market value when you're going to not campus locations, most students are being paid, or just people our age, I guess, are going to be paid close to that $15. If you think about like McDonald's, oftentimes if you just look locally, they're advertising anywhere between $14 to $18 an hour in some locations in the greater Columbia adjacent area. So while yes, it will definitely affect the conversations, grand scheme, that's something where that's going to have to be handled by them, but also if they look at the exact same places they're partnering with outside of how they operate, these kinds of monetary things are already represented.
Any other questions? Senator Leigh-Marie.
That's good. I mean,
That is outside of our scope as student senate.
yeah. I mean, I hope it would encourage the conversation, but that's not necessarily under our purview.
Any other questions? Chairwoman Cumby.
That is a complicated question, because they are not hourly. It is a stipend.
Any other
Changes for you. Yeah. It also changes based off how many years you work as an RA. It can increase.
I can send you that information. I have like a document. Any other questions? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life Committee. Continuing on with the call of the new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-143, sponsored by Senators Walker, Moore, Fry, Violette, a recommendation to add a ramp leading to the Russell House Theater.
The sponsors are recognized. Senator Kirby. There's been a motion to appoint Senator Bonchannon as Senator Kirby's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Kirby. Granted. Senator Hunter. Granted.
Okay, so all this does is a recommendation to either replace one of the staircases here in the Russell House Theater with a ramp, or add a ramp that would create more accessibility for current students and future students at the university. Also, when I say replace or add a staircase or add a ramp, it has to do through the discretion of the university. They would essentially, the plan is that they would essentially decide which one.
I would like to add that this is just a great thing to do, because any university campus, we have a responsibility of making sure campus is more accessible in all parts and aspects. So not doing this will kind of make us look bad, honestly, and it's just something we just have to do.
With that, we yield our time to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Liberties and Representation Committee. Good job, y'all. I like that. Continuing on with the call of the new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-144, sponsored by the Finance Committee, a bill to add a hosted conference section to chapter 3.
Chairman Matthews, you are recognized.
We're back. All right, so we discussed last Friday the possibility of adding a new type of request. So right now we're sitting at programs, tournaments, and conferences. Those are the three types of events that you can come to student government to get grants for. So we have discovered that there's a number of orgs on campus that want to host conferences here at the University of South Carolina, but it's difficult to do so because the funding is always tough to get, and right now we don't, and it's tough to get in general, and right now they can't even come to student government for that kind of a thing because under the current set of finance codes we have, the closest type of event that would be is a program, and for a conference, that's not going to be open to everybody, and so if it's going to be classified as a program, it basically, there are a number of things that would make a conference being hosted here ineligible for student government funding. And we think that's something that we should look into because we want to be hosting more conferences here in South Carolina. And so basically what this piece of legislation does is it adds this new type of request. So you'd be at 4 now. We'd be adding the hosted conferences request, which it's similar to programs. We're allowing funding for some items. We're taking away funding from other types of items. If you have questions on that or want some further details, you can talk to me, but I don't want to keep us up here for too long. We were very careful with how we defined what would qualify as a hosted conference. We were very careful with how we defined, the type of professional organizations that can oversee conferences being held on campus because we don't want there to be loopholes that would allow, like a group of friends to have some friends from other campuses and other schools coming, we don't want to be funding those types of gatherings. And so we were very careful with how we define what events like conferences would be eligible under this type of request. I don't expect us to have too many of these every year, like maybe 3 or 4. But I think this is something that could do a lot of good for this campus, good for this university. And so I'm excited about, what this could be. So we're going to review this in committee this week. We're going to come up with some sort of cap for this type of request. We're going to discuss what a partial funding rubric for this would look like. Because we would have to amend our guidelines in finance committee to make this happen. But yeah, I'm excited about this, and so is a lot of people in finance committee. So yeah, yield to questions.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Walker-Garcia.
Yeah.
Any further questions? It's okay if not. Senator Mayborn. Senator Mayborn. Granted. Any other questions? Senator Keenan.
Yeah, so like right now, if an organization wanted to host, like bring in, like what we're imagining with this is we're thinking like, so think about, I don't know, well, what's a good example, Aaron? Yes. Yes, so imagine an African Development Conference. There's this, what we're imagining is a national or even international organization that has, membership through professionals, has chapters all over the country. We want to be able to host conferences for organizations like that. Right now, we can't help those people out. We can't help those chapters on campus out and have them, host things here because, if they're going to get money from us through an event being held on campus, it's classified by us as a program. And the biggest hurdle with that is that programs have to be open to every single student. And the nature of a conference is that they are, like, you have to got to register them, you got to pay for them. And so that is sort of, why we decided to go down this route. Again, we don't expect very many of these to happen every year, maybe 3 or 4, but we want to at least have the option. And I think, when we communicate, the Treasurer's branch does a good job communicating, with organizations like what can and can't get funded through stuff. And so if they hear that, yes, they indeed now can host conferences here on campus and get a lot of that burden taken off of them through this budget, we think there's going to be a lot more of these conferences being held here. That's something that we've been trying to accomplish for a long time, and I think this would go a long way towards reaching that goal.
Any other questions? Chairperson Koviak.
Well, that's, I mean, that's not a bad idea at all. We try to be generous in finance committee really with how we define conferences and tournaments, stuff like that. Like, we have done events similar to like that, but like just on a larger scale, where we just define it as a conference or a tournament and just, let them go. That's absolutely something we can look at. The whole, basically, the goal behind this budget is we're trying to improve the experience of students here at the University of South Carolina, make the biggest impact possible, and benefit the school. Conferences being held here on campus, that certainly accomplishes that goal. It gets people on campus, it showcases our campus, showcases our students, helps our reputation a lot. Holding service events at other locations off campus where there's a travel expense, you could easily make an argument that also enhances the University of South Carolina, enhances our reputation. So that's absolutely something that we could consider in committee moving forward.
Seeing no further questions, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life and Finance Committees. Continuing on with the introduction of new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-145, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, a bill to increase fairness within the Elections Commission and elections code.
Chairwoman Diapolito, you're recognized. Senator Fry. Granted. Senator Fry. There's been a motion to appoint Senator Jacobson and Senator Fry as proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered.
Hey guys, this bill has to do with the elections and overall just making them fair and holding people accountable. While I have everyone here, going to explain a few of the important parts to clear up any questions. Where it states political influence, it's now clearly defined and the channels that it can occur through are defined to avoid any loopholes. We also took out the language of directly before or during election because no one should ever be able to politically influence our elections commission ever. And then we added specific time periods and requirements. Also some stuff that holds campaigns accountable while also preventing sabotage. We also put in that you cannot run for a Senate seat and an exec seat simultaneously. The purpose for this is because it'll remove the advantage of having extra funding and also extra exposure that you would get if you were running for exec while also running for Senate. So that it wouldn't be fair to people that are running for a Senate seat. And you could have a way larger budget and use it incorrectly. Also, the language campaign was changed to engage in any activity intended to acquire votes, because campaign was kind of just broad, and then those activities were listed as well as acceptable activities. Overall, it just provides consistency, accountability, simplicity, efficiency, all the C words. But we do have 2 weeks because of our break. So Judiciary on Friday is spending our time looking over this for about the 100th time and writing any amendments that we feel are necessary. If any of you guys feel any amendments are necessary, please let me know. Please let Judiciary know. Feel free. It's going to be an online meeting, so feel free to text me and I can send you the links so you can shadow or give an opinion, because any codes are important to take seriously, but these we definitely should, and I would love everyone's feedback. I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to all committees. Senator Hunter. There's been a motion to appoint Senator Matthews as Senator Hunter's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Hunter. Granted. Continuing on with the call of the new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-146, sponsored by Senators Soloco and Baldwin. A recommendation to initiate a pilot program for healthier vending machines at the College of Nursing Clinical Education Program, Lawrence Bryce Building, Arnold School of Public Health, and Darla Moore School of Business.
Senator Loco, you are recognized.
Hi guys, sorry I forgot my computer, so I have like 7 screens up here. But this is a really cool piece of legislation that me and Lexi have been working on, along with Zachary Bursby in the Graduate Students Association. He kind of jump started this idea, and we've been in communication with a lot of these colleges. We had kind of like an email back and forth with the College of Nursing, like the dean of the college, and a bunch of for the finance assistant dean and the clinical directors, things like that. And they're super on board with it. The Darla Moore School is super on board with it. They directed us to Carolina Card offices because they're in charge of all the vending machines on campus. And then the Arnold School of Public Health is also really on board, which is really exciting. So basically, this is just like a pilot program. So for either 1 semester or for a year, to add vending machines that have more healthier options. Because if you're like me and in the library for 13 hours a day, the Starbucks menu gets pretty limited after a while. And, there's obviously a lot of research that went into this. Like, the university has a pretty strict contract with Coca-Cola regarding the vending machines, and there is a way, they have healthier options on their website that you can put into the vending machines, add a second vending machine for it if you need to. And then other schools like MIT did this. They had a whole separate vending machine, brand called Fresh Fridge. I don't know if we're able to do that quite yet after talking to the Carolina Card offices because of our contract with Coca-Cola, but definitely cool to see a bunch of options. And with that, I yield to questions.
The senator yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Sheridan.
It's a little unclear from what we've talked to different admins and the Carolina Card office. Some people say that it is possible. Some people say that it isn't. So I think it's just something we need to further look into. I'm assuming that we cannot replace the things that are in the vending machines because I think it's a standardized contract throughout all of the schools, all the colleges that there are. So we would have to get a separate one, and there'd be feedback forms, surveys, things like that, and using I don't know how to, the data of how many people have purchased things like that to determine if it's a success or not.
Any other questions? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Health and Safety Committee. Continuing on with the call of the new legislation, the clerk will now read.
SPL 117-147, sponsored by Chairman Matthews, a bill to promote student engagement at the beginning of the spring semester.
Chairman Matthews, you are recognized.
Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, but back in August, we did a very similar bill to basically fix that awkward period between the very beginning of the semester and, I guess, at some point after the very beginning of the semester. And that's because in Finance Committee, we cannot review allocation requests for events that have already occurred, and that always created a very awkward period of time in, late August, early September, as well as early January, the spring semester, where there's some events that can't make it to Finance Committee because they simply haven't made it through the Garnet Gate system, made it to the Treasurer's office in time for us to review them. And so we passed a piece last August or September that basically did away with it basically gave exceptions for allocation requests submitted within a certain time frame that would allow us to review those pieces, those allocation requests after the event had occurred. And so, if you were thinking about the org fair, a lot of those events, they were able to submit allocation requests after the fact and get, reimbursed for a lot of that because we passed that piece of legislation. This is doing the same thing for the spring. I had meant to do it all semester, but I never got around to it, so here I am. I yield the question.
The chairman yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, this legislation is now referred to the Student Life and Finance Committees. Continuing on with the call of the new legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, that concludes the call of the introduced legislation. We are now on the call of the uncontested legislation. The clerk will now read.
SBL 117-132, sponsored by Chairperson Dappolito, a recommendation to replace missing/broken bathroom stall.
Chairwoman Diapolito, you are recognized.
This is just to stop the spread of germs and make sure we have updated facilities. I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed. The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read. Sorry, I can't talk today.
SBL 117-133, sponsored by Senator Lewis, a recommendation to provide LinkedIn Premium access for students.
Senator Lewis, you are recognized.
Hey, how y'all doing? So basically, this is just a pretty simple, recommendation I think I had was that basically we are asking for LinkedIn premium accounts for our students to be very beneficial to them when it comes to education, job research, and things like that. And let's be trailblazers. Let's set the new trend across the country. With that, I yield for questions.
Senator Lewis yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. Lester, you have the next one. All opposed. The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested. Clapping about the bathroom. Only the breathing. Okay, continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-135, sponsored by Senator Lewis, a recommendation to offer free printing days during finals week for students.
Senator Lewis, you are now recognized.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good idea. I think that is something that will be beneficial to students. It's not something that's like long-term permanent. It's something, saying this is a resource you can use like some of your finals, because I don't know why, but some reason we're having more professors and instructors with things printed out these days. Not sure of that. But yeah, just to help them out, if they're requiring it, we're going to help the students out to meet those requirements, and so unnecessary burdens are not put on them. And I'll kind of look forward to fighting for this one, honestly. With that, I yield for questions.
Senator Lewis yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-136, sponsored by Senators Lemon, Reed, Violette, and Fry, a recommendation to implement a non-honors University of South Carolina history course into the curriculum.
The sponsors are recognized. Senator Loco? Granted. Senator Santiago? Granted.
I don't have many more updates about this legislation. It's mostly the same things. I want to make a history course about this university that isn't only for South Carolina Honors College students. The university historian, Evan Falconberry, has expressed great interest in teaching this class and creating a curriculum for this class, and I need my time to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed. The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. First one. Yay, Sebastian. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-137, sponsored by Lewis, the recommendation to create a program with local businesses to offer discounts to students.
Senator Lewis, you are now recognized.
So I think this is a pretty simple one, and the terms, and when I say that, and mean by that is that getting the businesses together and creating this program, like having like discounts and things that like programs for things like that. I think it'd be very beneficial to students, and hopefully some of the businesses want to get on board. But when I think of this, I think of you see like a TV and commercial. They say if you come by Friday, you get half off this appetizer or something like that. But then instead of doing that, it'll be exclusive for students to go and get those kind of meals and purchases like Main Street District, Vista, wherever y'all go on your free time. So, things like that. Yeah, with that, I yield for questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. The ayes have it, this legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-138, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, a bill to correct constitutional challenges, criteria.
Chairwoman Diapolito, you are recognized.
This bill is just taking out any moot language while also keeping the purpose of that line. I yield my time to questions.
The chairwoman yields her time to questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed. The ayes have it, this legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with the call of the uncontested legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, we are now on the call of the contested legislation. Is there a motion for a brief 3-minute recess for people to use the bathroom? Is there a second? Without objection, we will now be in a recess for 3 minutes. Actually, 3 minutes. We are starting at 6:37, whether you're here or not. We are now on the call of the contested calendar. The clerk will now read.
SBL 117-131, sponsored by Senators Walker, Fry, Violette, and Van Warren, a recommendation to revitalize the utilities and humanities classroom.
The sponsors are recognized. If you're looking around and your friends are not here, please text them and make sure they're coming back.
So I believe the only reason why this is on the contested calendar is because there was an amendment added by the academics committee. Okay. Yeah, Ash will explain.
I was the one who amended it. We just wanted to specify which Welsh humanities building we were talking about, because after looking through university stuff, both the office and classroom building are called Welsh Humanities. One of them's J. Welsh, maybe that's different. But this was just to specify using the official acronym that was listed on one of the websites. So that's the only amendment here. That's the only reason it was contested.
But yeah, so now it's supposed to be the actual classrooms and not classrooms, not the office rooms. But yeah, I was supposed to speak on this last time, but I did it for my Spanish teacher because the boards are in terrible condition and she's always like complaining about it in Spanish class, like every week. And then she has to bring her own markers and her erasers are just terrible. So I was just like, I really did this for her and also I guess for everybody else. And so, yeah, I think this would be a great thing. I now yield my time to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Lewis. Okay, there's been a motion to bypass period of debate and pass this piece by a voice vote. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed. The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Good job, y'all. Good motion, Senator Lewis. Love that one. Okay, continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-139, sponsored by Senator Keenan, a recommendation to update the signage for the College of Pharmacy.
Senator Keenan, you are recognized.
Hey everyone, thankfully I'm in a better mood than I was last week because I'm not feeling sick, so I can actually see everyone and communicate easily. So I believe the reason this one's on the contested is because I was talking with Lennox about what academics, they just kind of wanted more specificity when it came to it, and there was some wording and that kind of thing that they didn't really understand, and it was more so the admin side of things rather than just like getting it across the board. But basically this one is about adding a new sign outside the College of Pharmacy because right now there currently isn't one, and usually the one that was there and has been there features not only the College of Pharmacy but also 9 other colleges and or departments, and it's kind of hard to see the College of Pharmacy written on there, and I didn't even know the College of Pharmacy building was inside Coker until I went to pharmacy school. There is signing inside, but on the outside, there's not a whole lot. To let you know that Coker is the College of Pharmacy. The entire right-hand side of the building, if you're facing it from the Long Street Theater, is the College of Pharmacy from the 6th floor, I believe, to the top, all the way down to the basement. All those, the right-hand side is classrooms, offices, research centers, labs, whatnot, and everything is for the College of Pharmacy, but you wouldn't know that from the outside of the building because you can't see anything. Yeah. I yield my time to questions.
The senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Senator Walker. There's been a motion to bypass the period of debate and pass SBL 117-139 by voice vote. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. We will now move to a voice vote on this legislation. All those in favor of passage say aye. All opposed. The ayes have it. This legislation is now adopted. Continuing on with first piece, right? Yay, good job. First piece. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 117-140, sponsored by Chairman Matthews and Speaker Pro Tempore Violette, a bill to amend the Constitution to allow the student body treasurer to vote on allocation requests for the finance committee.
The sponsors are recognized.
Alrighty. So who here in this room has questions or concerns about this piece? Raise your hand.
The treasurer voting on finance allocation.
Okay, that's one. That's two. Other questions or concerns? Okay. All right. So I think that is my fault because I did not very clearly communicate last Wednesday what this would mean, how this would work, and that is on me. So here's how I think we should go through this. What is the treasurer elected to do? If you ask me, the treasurer is elected to represent students in the student government financial system. All right. My next question for you guys is who decides what can and can't get funded? The answer to that is Finance Committee. The next thing, who interprets these rules stipulating what can and can't get funded? The answer to that is also 100% Finance Committee and Senate. Why is that and how does that work? Well, every single time we in Finance Committee vote on allocation requests, that is us interpreting the codes. These votes are almost always unanimous, either for or against, and sometimes when there are splits, that's because people have different interpretations of these codes. And this system, as we have it right now, it is functioning fine. But I have talked to four and a half treasurers over the last few years that I've either been in student government or I've talked to previous ones who were around beforehand. And if you ask me and if you ask any of them, that role of the treasurer seems incomplete because they have no say in the rules of what can get funded by student government, nor do they have any interpretive power over those rules. By granting the treasurer a vote on Finance Committee on specifically allocation requests, we would be lending just one piece of that interpretive authority to the treasurer, which I think would make the role more complete. Some important things to note with this is that the treasurer would still have zero say in how the finance codes are written. So, a legislation that comes from this room into Finance Committee through a referral, the treasurer would still, according to this legislation, have zero vote on those pieces. So we would still have all of the authority over legislative matters, over the rules. The treasurer would simply have a single vote that would serve to a single vote to help interpret those rules, which I think would lend a lot of value both to decisions made in Finance Committee. It would really flesh out the role of the treasurer, which as of right now feels incomplete. I think another important thing to note is that the treasurer was added back to the Constitution only a year and a half ago. So I think this will go a long way to fleshing out the role. And then finally, Senate would still have a final say on who and what gets approved for funding. The treasurer does not have a vote in this room. It is all of us 50 senators who have the ultimate say on what gets funded. Now, I talked to a lot of you guys about this, and there are a few common concerns that I have seen. Some of you asked, do other SEC schools do this? I'm not really qualified to answer that question because I haven't done that research myself. I know some others do. Apparently, there are some others. I can't speak on that. What I can say is I don't really care what these other SEC schools do. We are the University of South Carolina. We
I
have
also
a
just want
very...
a point of information that the answer is yes.
Okay. We're the University of South Carolina. We do things our own way. We always have. We have a very unique system in student government finance that is very unique to us. I have looked at other systems, and there's pale in comparison to what we've got in terms of what we can do to serve the student. Another question that has been risen is, would this disrupt the balance of power between Treasurer and Finance Committee and Senate? The answer to that question is yes. But I would like to argue that there already exists a power imbalance, and right now, power is firmly 100% in the hands of Finance Committee. I think this would go a long way to balancing that just a little bit to make the treasurer's role a little more fleshed out. It would improve the way Finance Committee operates. I've been in this committee for a year and a half. I'm telling you, this would help things a lot. And even still, there is still no, risk of a treasurer overreaching her authority or their authority, whoever the treasurer is, because again, this would not take place until after a referendum if it were passed by today, and then signed and passed a referendum. This wouldn't happen until at least next year. If this were to still happen, the treasurer would have zero ultimate say over who gets the funding. That's still all in this room. And finally, why make this change now? We got a functioning system. Things are going fine. That does not mean there is no room for improvement to improve the change. And that is why I think this is something that we should seriously consider. I am very much in favor of this. Finance Committee found this unanimously favorable last week, which I think speaks a lot. Judiciary found this favorable last week. I think that speaks a lot. And so please, if you guys have questions, I very, very much want to answer them and to address your concerns, because I think this is something that would do a lot of good. Yeah, Daniel, if you have anything to add?
I know there was some confusion too, that people think that, oh, because they're voting on the allocation request themselves, that they're also voting on legislation because it gets factored in. I know that's an argument that I had in Finance Committee before I spoke to Chairman Matthews, and that's not how it works at all. It would solely be on those allocation requests. No say in legislation whatsoever.
All right, yield to questions.
The sponsors yield their time to questions. Are there any questions? Really quickly, I just want to remind everybody to, like, point of information things. Number one, this bill edits the Constitution, so if it passes tonight, this doesn't go into effect after Senate. It has to go through a vote by the entire student body, which would be during general student body elections in March. Number two, I think this is going to be a fun period of debate, so just make sure questions are questions and debate points can be brought up when you go up to speak as somebody speaking on the topic. Questions? Chairperson Koviak.
Well, for one, I don't think this sets a bad precedent at all, because we are still it is still very explicitly stated in this bill that the treasurer would have zero say in legislative matters. So I don't think we're really at risk of anything there. Another thing is, we are the Student Senate. We have the ability to define the role of the president, of the speaker, of senators ourselves. We have the ability to define the role of the treasurer in any way we wish. I don't think that, like, I think the risk of a future Senate coming in and saying the treasurer should have a role in legislative matters, and only just allocation requests, but then also legislative matters, I don't really think that's much of a risk, because if we're seeing this much, like, resistance to simply adding a vote on allocation requests only, taking that next step, I think, is something that is extremely far-fetched. You've also got the added protection of any bill coming out of here that would change the codes, as well as the Constitution that had to be signed by a president. And so there is still that. To check that power, there's still the referendum by the student body, who has a very vested interest in how this role is defined, because this, the treasurer is responsible ultimately for overseeing what is now a $180,000 budget, what will hopefully be a much larger budget in the years to come. I think there are a lot of checks against any corruption of this position, merely because it is a very important position to the student body. If the student body were educated in the correct manner, any change that would corrupt the position would not go into effect. Our friends at the Daily Gamecock would certainly make sure to highlight any corruptible amendments to the position. And so I do not think that that is a very big concern. I don't think this is setting a very dangerous precedent at all. I think this is, again, would be a very positive addition to the role, which at this point feels incomplete. And I hope I've answered your question.
Any other questions? Senator Middleton. Chairwoman, there's been a motion to appoint Chairwoman Diabolito as Senator Middleton's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Middleton. Granted. Any other questions for Senator Sams?
interesting question. You know, most of the time, members of the finance committee are very opinionated when it comes to use requests, especially if it is one that has reached some sort of opposition, especially when it comes to these matters where, like, you can interpret things one way or the other. It's not always 100% clear. But I actually do see your point. Human psychology could, have an impact there. What I will say is that, giving the treasurer a vote on the finance committee for allocation requests in the Constitution doesn't mean we cannot further define that in the codes. That is absolutely something that we can consider, or the next Senate can consider when we were to come back. I'm sure many of you are going to be in the next Senate. And so that is something that we can certainly look at. I don't know if that is something that is really worth defining too much in the Constitution itself. The Constitution is purposefully vague when it comes to things like that. We don't define, maybe voting order is defined as alphabetical, right? Point of question.
What?
Is voting order defined in the Constitution for Senate?
Whole questions out of the scope of the Constitution, like,
Yeah.
like it's Robert's rules.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So, like, and that would also kind of be up to whoever the vice chair is. I mean, I when I was vice chair, I always did voting order in order of who entered the room first. I didn't really, didn't really matter to me, who they were. I believe if the car goes around the table, that's another way to do it. It doesn't really matter a whole lot because usually people are going to vote the way that they feel about a certain thing because sometimes, I don't know if you, for people in finance committee, sometimes those debates and those arguments can get pretty passionate. So and not always, people are not always going to have the same opinion as the treasurer. Like as of right now, sometimes Ashley disagrees with the committee on one thing. And, a lot of people will vote in a different way that the treasurer would or had, advised with. That wouldn't really change in this scenario. I think this is something, I think it's an interesting question that can be further defined in the codes. I'm going to leave it at that.
Any other questions? Senator Walker?
Yep, and so, well, that again would be defined further in the codes because it's that, you're very correct in that is a thing for current voting members. That is defined in the codes, and so I've written up a piece. I actually originally wrote up a piece to make this happen in the codes. Only then did I discover that this was in the Constitution, which is why we've got this piece here before us. And so I've got that piece written. I've got that piece written in collaboration with some younger senators who plan to run again, and hopefully we'll be back here to implement those changes to the code should this pass in a referendum and pass here in this room. It is a very good point, and it is a concern that we have talked about and that we have addressed through a piece of legislation, or at least through language that will be added in legislation should this pass in the next Senate.
Any other questions? Chairperson Kubiak?
Doesn't get past us? Well, then. Well, on a personal note, I will be out of the country. So I personally likely will not be doing a whole lot about it. If it doesn't pass through a referendum by the student body, then it doesn't pass, and this is something that the student body did not want to see happen. And I think if that were to occur, this is a position that is very close to the student body. The student body, especially organizations, have a very big vested interest in how this role functions and how finance committee functions. And if they don't think that this is a power that the treasurer should have, then that is something that we should all listen to. And I mean, if I were to come back next year, I wouldn't touch it.
Any other questions?
Oh, and then you had a first question. What was that? Oh, none that I think would be worthwhile moving forward with. An idea had been floated about to simply give the treasurer a proxy on finance committee, but I think that is more work than I think it is really worth. I think this is a very simple and elegant solution to this problem. Adding a proxy would kind of do the same thing, but then okay, what if the proxy decides to vote the way that the treasurer did not feel? It's an interesting solution, but this is a much more simple way to solve this problem. Beyond that, no, I don't see any other way of solving this.
Any other questions? Senator Coulomb?
That's correct, and I believe that is actually here in the bill. It is. Well, or maybe that was in the. That is in the piece that we wrote up for the codes. That if there were a representative sent by the treasurer, they could not vote, because we don't want somebody getting in there who is appointed, not elected or approved by people in this room, to be coming in there and helping to interpret the codes. That's something that we wanted to avoid. So it is the treasurer and the treasurer alone who would be given this additional vote on finance committee allocation request. But that's kind of out of the scope of this. That sort of thing is not defined in the Constitution either for sitting voting members. That's further defined in the codes, and the Constitution very explicitly says there are, more. I'm paraphrasing here, but there's more stuff to be clarified, but that stuff is clarified in the codes, and then we go to the codes and we see it in there clarified. So, good question. It's in the language that we've written up the codes, if this were to get passed. And the answer to that question is, again, no. Chief of staff, comptrollers, they will not have a vote.
All right. Seeing no further questions, thank you. We will now move to a period of debate on this legislation. Do any senators wish to speak on this matter? Senator Von Cannon. I also just want to remind everybody again, just to make sure that we're going off the bill. Lots of really great questions, but the scope of this bill is should the treasurer get a vote or not a vote, not procedural stuff when it comes to how finance committee runs its meetings.
Hey everybody, I'm just going to take a quick moment of your time. I have a little something prepared because I have a very strong opinion on this bill. I'm opposed to SBL 117-140, and that is because it destroys the very system 116 student government bodies have laid down before us. A clear and distinct separation of powers with an executive branch that is elected by the student body and held accountable by a Senate charged with carrying out the codes and Constitution. This bill has no real benefit, and I have yet to hear one reason why it is needed, other than the fact that the treasurer is knowledgeable about the proceedings of organizational funding. That is true. That is the treasurer's job. That is also why in Section 3-530D of the codes that all allocation requests must be reviewed by a member of the treasurer's staff, the treasurer, and the student finance committee. One of the main reasons the proponents of this amendment have stated that this should be put in place is because the treasurer is knowledgeable about the funding system and should therefore have a vote on the committee. But if that is the case, then I would argue the president and the vice president know more about student life than the student life committee, yet they were not on the student life committee. The chief justice knows more about the codes and constitutions than the judiciary committee, yet he is not a member. That is because they are not senators and that right is not given to them. There is a distinction between these jobs. But if this amendment passes, who's to say they couldn't be on these committees? We allow the treasurer to because they are simply knowledgeable. The lines between the executive and Senate will blur, and the duty of the Senate to keep the executive in check will be breached by the fact that they would be integrated into our own distinct system. The reason why senators are on these committees and not the executives is because we have select audiences we are accountable to, colleges we represent, and people who do not know the inner workings of student government nor the codes, but trust us to make decisions on their behalf. We know the treasurer is elected by the entire student body. That is because it is a neutral branch dedicated solely to ensuring students can get their organizations funded and helping them when they need it. this amendment passes, that neutrality will be broken, and treasurer's workshops and events where the treasurer is supposed to show you the means to get your funding will become a ground where students can go up to the treasurer and ask for specific support for their org, ask them to rule favorable, to vote their way, to tell the finance committee how to think, bridging and breaking that unspoken rule that the treasurer wants every org that consists with school policy to get their org funded when they could also be the deciding vote in why your org does not get funded. To claim almost every vote is unanimous is not reason enough to give a separate branch a vote on the committee, and I think it reinforces the notion that there is no need for this amendment to be enacted. Finance committee has a tie-breaking vote if necessary in the chair. Throughout the years, student government funding has faced its fair share of criticism and failure. Controversies have arisen and claims of bias have been speculated, with new methods of funding being tested almost every year because we simply do not have a lasting answer to the student body. And our way to answer these fears is to give this branch a direct vote and an even bigger target on their back. What could be a simple unanimous vote in favor or against would be scrutinized even more if an executive branch that is already overworked and understaffed is added to a Senate committee. Yes, it is a fact that the treasurer is knowledgeable of the inner workings of organizational funding and can recognize the students' needs and questions because that is their job stated in the codes. It's their sole job and it allows them that freedom. That is why Finance Committee collaborates with them. That is why there is this distinction between the two. The regular duties of the treasurer, the meetings they attend, and workshops they hold will be testing grounds for students to try to convince the treasurer to vote a certain way on behalf of their organization. Because this would become such a personal job, it gives them an easy target to pin when their org does not get funding, since they are in tie and responsible for the system that it flows through. I think senators should ask themselves if this amendment benefits the student body and the Finance Committee in general, even though the treasurer is already required to collaborate with the Finance Committee anyway. And if you want your vote to set the precedent that tears down a century-long standard of the separation between these powers that we are so familiar with. If you want a regular student who is not knowledgeable of the codes, the proceedings of the Senate, the full duties of the treasurer and the Finance Committee, to vote on this change and trust them to understand every consequence that their vote will result in, then I ask you to think long and hard about what this amendment stands for. Some students do not even know we have a student government, and most have little knowledge of our proceedings or our codes and constitution. That is why they elected us. They gave us this job to slog through codes and consider every outcome that is the result of our actions because they will not do it themselves. That is the point of the Senate. They trust us to do this unsavory job and let it consume us until we have explored every avenue and come to the correct conclusion. I ask you to think about the future of what this amendment would accomplish, as well as the doors it could open. And I think you will come to the same conclusion as I, that this bill is an unnecessary corruption of the standard that has stood for 117 years. I yield to the will.
Any other senators wishing to speak on this matter? Senator Jacobson. It's typically one at a time, unfortunately.
I just wanted to add, I was gonna question our plan of information, but it is, Daniel showed me just a moment ago that in the codes it says that, I know this isn't anything to do with the codes, but in the codes it says that the Speaker of the Student Senate has to serve as an ex officio member in the Rules Committee, and I pulled up, because I know this is true, Section 3410C1, a representative from the Office of the Student Body Treasurer, which can include the Treasurer herself, is codified to serve as an ex officio non-voting member of the Student Senate Finance Committee. So they're already a member, and at this, also, that's any representative from her office, the Office of Student Body Treasurer. He is already a member. It is a non-voting member, and it's just looking to change the non-voting part. And it's particularly during the review of funding allocation requests. So it is already required for them to be there during all of these meetings and do everything but vote. We have the questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Continuing on with the period of debate, Speaker Pro Tempore Violette.
As I understand it, it appears that, one of the bigger points is that, this will influence the way other people vote. I mean, we have the chairman of the Finance Committee who really, the chairman and the vice chairman who both facilitate the voting itself. I mean, and ultimately the committee itself should hold some form of knowledge on this anyway. I mean, you were elected by the student body, you know, for a reason. I just believe that there's enough checks and balances in place that if this were implemented, we would, you know, be able to rectify a mistake or any form of opinionated bias. With that, I yield the question.
The Speaker Pro Tempore yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Chairwoman Diapolito. There's been an objection. Are you willing to amend? That's how it goes when somebody objects, is you amend it afterward. There's been a motion to limit the period of debate to 3 minutes. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The period of debate is limited for 3 minutes. What? Yeah, your question period starts now and the 3 minute period starts. Any questions? Senator Sheridan? Granted, there's been a motion to appoint Senator Von Cannon as Senator Sheridan's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any questions? Senator Modica? There's been a motion to appoint Senator Iftikhar as Senator Modica's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Modica? Granted. Senator Jacobson? Yes, it does. 3-minute clock is running.
Motion to-
Are there any other questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore? Senator Sanders?
Well, unfortunately, that tie-breaking vote is already given to the chairman of the Finance Committee. You know, and specifically in the language that is for the Speaker of the Student Senate, it only says ex officio member. It doesn't specify non-voting. I mean, one could interpret that, oh, she could have a vote on the Rules Committee. She could. You know, I think we have I think it was, whoever it is, you know, Speaker of the Student Senate and Rules, Treasurer on Finance. I could have swore there was one more in one other committee that was an exec branch, or exec role. Pardon me if I am mistaken with that. But I mean, I can say from experience, having an exec position in a committee doesn't really alter much for us. I hope that answers your question.
Any other questions? Senator Von Cannon?
Yes, it is described either in the Constitution or the codes that way.
Chairman Matthews? There's been a motion to extend the period of debate by 3 minutes. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The period of debate is extended for a period of 3 minutes. Any other questions? Senator DiLorenzo? There's been a motion to appoint Senator Gopel as Senator DiLorenzo's proxy. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator DiLorenzo? Granted. Any other questions for the Speaker Pro Tempore? Seeing none, thank you. We will continue on with the period of debate. Does any senator wish to speak on this matter? Senator Matthews?
So actually, I can appreciate a lot of Cole's points with this one. You know, the risk of somebody coming up here during a workshop advocating to the treasurer and all that. That already happens. The treasurer is a member, be it right now a non-voting member of the committee. They're there to advise. They're there to help to sway votes on the Finance Committee one way or the other. I think, again, this comes down to a misunderstanding of how voting on the allocation works. we are voting on whether or not something is eligible under the codes. It's not like, oh, do we think this is something that it should be funded based on, do we like this? No, that's not really how it works. If something says or explicitly in the codes that it can be funded, then we vote yes. There's no room to vote no there. That's not how it works. That's on the chair to govern to make sure that that's how that works, and that's on to the speaker to make sure that there is a chair that governs that norm in Finance Committee. I think another important thing to acknowledge here is that we on Finance Committee and the treasurer, they want to get every bit of funding passed as possible to make sure that this funding is distributed in a fair way amongst the student body. Yes, we've got a partial funding system going on right now. That's because we have a smaller budget. When we are in committee and we think there is room in the codes to allow something to get funded, we vote yes on that piece of funding because that is our job. We are a finance committee. We are elected by our constituents to represent students. And as this is student money that we're messing with, we want to get this money out to students. That's how it goes. I don't think there's much risk for somebody to, for the treasurer to personally go after a single org and in reference to voting on allocation requests. Simply because if they're submitting a request for something as simple as a location fee or for food, there is no room for that personal opinion to get involved there. It is a yes if it is in the codes. It is, there is a gray area when it comes to inventorable items and some other things that can be up to interpretation, but that's why there's a committee. There's the treasurer who would, if this passed, become a voting member, and there are at least 7 other voting members. It's why Finance Committee has the highest quorum number in this body, because there needs to be as many people in that room voting to make sure that these votes are done fairly. With that, I yield the question.
Senator Jacobson. You can finish your statement.
And breaching that could be consequences, which is why that's not something that's really done.
Okay. Seeing as the period of debate has ended, we will now move to a roll call vote on this legislation. It is super important you are not forgetting who you're proxying for, and I need you to be really loud and enunciate your words. Please, 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 please. The clerk will call the roll.
Oloco. Andrews. Oloco. Anderson. Baldinger. Venegas. Frazier. Coulomb. Koviak. Cumby. Doppolito. Davis. DiLorenzo. Dorsey.
Proxy aye for DiLorenzo, no for Dorsey. Is that correct? Okay.
Borzanowski. Greer. Fry. Dobbin. Gay. George. Gopel. Hopkins. Hunter. Iftikhar. Jacobson. Cassetti. Keenan. Kearns. Kirby. Lemery. Lewis. Lusry. Matthews. Manwaring. Middleton. Monica. Makapusia. Pigford. Primus. Ryan. Sams, Sanders, Santiago Cedillo, Sheridan, Spurgeon, Dilkert, Tapia, Talaka, Violette, Von Cannon, Walker, Watley.
Have all senators voting in present answered the call? By a vote of 27 ayes, 21 nays, and 1 abstention, this legislation has been adopted. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read.
SBL 11731, sponsored by Senators Coolum and George, a resolution to establish an ad hoc committee to research and propose alternatives for the student government calendar term.
Senator Coolum, you're recognized.
All right, so sorry I'm keeping y'all here a little longer. Essentially, I proposed this back in September, but then I realized I couldn't really work on this anymore, so I tabled it. But now I have to pass it before I go abroad, or attempt to pass it. Essentially what this does is it creates a ad hoc committee that will potentially investigate whether student government should use a different term system. So currently we're on that March to March term, right? I personally don't think that it's that optimal for like finances, for other things in student government. So we're passing this legislation would mean that you would be saying yes to creating an ad hoc committee that you could join to investigate both should we change the terms for student government, 1, and 2, if so, what should the new term be? So saying yes doesn't mean, and nothing really happens if you say yes. It just means that we're going to look into this more.
Questions? Wow.
Questions.
Senator yields his time to questions. Are there any questions? Speaker Pro Tempore Violette.
Yeah. Oh. Well, hold on. How many sessions is that? Let me see. That's 2. Okay. Ugh. Can I like make an amendment like right now?
No.
Okay.
You can motion to carry it over.
I'm
Is
not-
there a motion to carry this bill over? Is there a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed. The ayes have it. This bill is now carried over. You can amend it and then represent it.
I'm not gonna be there next week.
Senator George.
Okay. There you go. All right, who wants to be co-sponsor?
Anybody? Wait. Sorry. I don't want to get like too informal. We're still in like the official Senate time. Anybody can amend any legislation. You don't have to be a sponsor. You can add yourself as a co-sponsor right now, or you can add yourself next week. Senator Jacobson. There's been a motion to add Senator Jacobson and Senator Violette as co-sponsors to SBL 11731. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Senator Iftikhar. There's been a motion to add Senator Iftikhar as a co-sponsor to SBL 11731. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. If you'd like to be added as a co-sponsor, put your hand up, please. Motion to add Senator Motion to add Senator Walker and Senator Koviak as a co-sponsor. Is there a motion to add them to be a co-sponsor to SBL 11731? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any other questions, comments, concerns? You can sit down because the bill was carried.
All right, we'll get that date fixed up.
And happy last Senate session, Senator Golem, who we missed. All right. Continuing on with the call of the contested legislation, the clerk will now read. Hearing none, that completes the call. We are now in line for a period of open discussion. Does any senator wish to bring a matter of attention to the body? Senator Lewis.
Yep. So I just wanted to come up here for a minute. This is an open discussion period, so I feel like this is appropriate to do this. Just talk about a couple of things. Yeah, I think in the Senate, one of the things I want us to really look at here in the Senate is the time that we have our Senate meetings here. I know they run at 5:30, but
Senator Lewis, the open discussion period is for things that happen during the Senate session that just occurred. Okay.
the reason I was saying that is because right now we got a tiger burn going on, and it's almost 7:30, and so I feel like sometime we need to address our time management that we're using in Senate.
Do you yield?
Yeah, I'm just gonna yield away. I don't need questions from you.
Okay, that's fine. Point of information, Senate is codified to run every single Wednesday. Like when we had Senate the Wednesday before fall break, I was just say legally, I codifiably do not have the right to cancel Senate, and I very much would like to have that right, but I do not. Any other questions? Seeing none, we will now move to a period of announcements. Are there any announcements from the floor at this time? Senator Jacobson. Are there any other announcements from the floor? Senator Van Warren. You can stay sitting, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, Senator Wakusia. Okay, any other announcements from the floor? Senator Walker. Oh, cute. All right, any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we're not going to take a picture just because I know people have stuff to do after this. We'll take a cute one next week in all of our holiday attire. Good use of Robert's rules today. Please have a happy Thanksgiving. I was going to ask you guys what you're grateful for, but we're rushed for time. With no further announcements, is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Without objection, the Senate will now stand adjourned until Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025.